Hey friends, I had a wonderful session this morning, couple of sessions actually. I just had a great session on the piano with a student, and I had a session before that with a client and friend, and it was just so inspiring. A phrase popped out during the course of our conversation that kind of it kind of made me laugh, and it kind of as I then reflected on it, I was like, wow, that really summarizes things really well. So we were talking about making a shift in our life from what might feel like our day job. And and funny enough, this ties into another session that I had a couple days ago where a student of mine was telling me about a book that they're reading. I think it's called The Big Leap. And it's talking about how everybody has a zone of excellence and a zone of genius. And the zone of excellence is the area of our life that we clearly are excellent at, that we clearly have the skill set and a sort of natural aptitude for, but it's distinguished from the zone of our genius, because the zone of our genius is really the zone where we're living from our heart. We're living from the deepest part of ourselves, and we're serving our highest purpose. Now, there may be occasions and individuals in whom those two things are the same, but a lot of times what we'll find is if we are if we're in the process of connecting more and more deeply to our genius, to the zone of our genius, then we have to actually dismantle our attachment to our excellence. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to become less excellent at it, or that we want to sabotage that part of our life. It just means we can acknowledge that, and we start to understand that just because we're good at something, that doesn't mean that that's what we're meant to do with all of our life. Being really good at something doesn't define us. It doesn't make that thing define us. And in fact, frequently, if you look hard enough, there are probably some ways in which that zone of excellence is a defense or a smokescreen or an escape from either from the zone of our genius itself, or from whatever traumas and pains and negative experiences we may have had that have somehow convinced us that the zone of our genius is not good enough, or is too good for us, we don't deserve it, or it's not realistic. Whatever kind of apprehensions or hang-ups we might have around the zone of our genius, of our purpose, of our heart, we may find that the zone of our excellence is where we hide out and sort of, it's like we defend our lives from this zone because we're clearly skilled. We're clearly we clearly have the aptitude, and we clearly have the excellence to perform, but that performance is a kind of decoy. It's a kind of smokescreen. And then little by little, as we become more and more connected to our heart, that zone of excellence becomes more and more intolerable. It becomes harder and harder to spend time there, because we just, no matter how good we are at it, no matter how much success we might be finding there, it's not what we're really about. And so we have to eventually return to this zone of our heart, of our genius, whether or not we even think we want to. We're just compelled to move in the direction of our deepest calling, and so there's a shift that takes place there. And so this morning, as we were talking about this, what the conversation turned to how we sort of exit from the zone of our, in this case, the zone of our excellence, and make that shift. And in this case, it's a professional a professional engagement and some professional relationships where this friend of mine was wanting to make the statement really clear. This change, like this change that I'm making, is really about shifting the emphasis in my life into the area that is most that's my calling, that I really need to spend my heart in, and away from this other area where clearly a zone of excellence, but it's not at this point serving that deeper calling. But that exit, in terms of how we frame this for our professional relationships, it's not about I got a better deal or I got a better gig in the zone of my excellence. I'm actually putting that whole side of myself down in a way. So it's not that I have a better deal coming down the road, which made me think of the phrase, you are my number one second priority. You're the thing that, as long as I'm in this zone of excellence, I will happily serve. But the problem is, it's our second priority, right? And I think this is how this. So then this kind of this phrase that popped out in the session, as I reflected on it, it started to take on a new meaning, or a larger meaning, like, because it applies to my life as well. I have a number one second priority. If my first priority is connection to source, and I know that, this is what I said to myself and got really clear on around about the time that I started this video post, whatever that is, 472 days ago, and even a little before that, actually, but I got really clear on that, and I realized everything else is second priority. And then that magical thing that I know I've talked about on this post before, that magical thing happens where all of our second priorities slot into a hierarchy that makes sense. They slot into our life in the way that they need to, and the way that we want them to. And generally, there's a pretty comfortable fit among them. Generally, if when we're in the zone of our excellence, those priorities are jockeying for attention, and there's never enough time, and there's always too much. There's always too much a little too much to manage, or way too much to manage, depending on how ambitious we are. There's friction among those priorities, because when we're in the zone of excellence, we are detached from the overarching orienting factor of our life. We're detached from our heart. We're detached from the part of us that knows what we are about. And so then if you've already kind of like taken that part off the table, and you're already functioning in a zone where that kind of deeper connection to self is not readily available, it's easy to see how competing ambitions and competing priorities might all try to claim the top spot. They might all try to be the number one priority, because why not? Nobody's really driving this ship. I should be top dog, It's kind of like that thing that happens in in the absence of an authority that everyone that we trust, we become disoriented about what authority should even be, and whether we even need an authority, or whether it's just every man woman for themselves. So this was just really interesting for me to observe, and to then sort of go, oh yeah, well, so in my own life, connection to source is my number one priority. And then my number one second priority is probably, creative work. Creative work. And piano is in there right now. Piano is featuring really prominently in my practice and in the way I allocate my time. But I'm also up to my eyeballs in another project and it's clear, and then I clearly get into the zone of excellence stuff, where I'm in creative projects where I have the skill set and I have the aptitude, and I can meet virtually every challenge, and the challenges don't scare me. The challenges don't, there's no fear that I'm not going to perform. But if I spend too much time there, my heart starts to hurt. And it starts to go, but what are we doing? What are we doing? What are we proving? What are we proving with this excellence? And so coming back to that then orients everything else. It's like then my relationship to my family, my relationship to my students and my friends, and the people in my life, and the way in which I have an influence on the world comes back into focus, and it's like, oh right, that's what this is. That's what I'm all about. So establishing that number one second priority is its own. There's a beautiful journey there as well, but establishing that first priority is first priority. Getting clear on that is how everything else kind of slots into place. And so I was just really grateful for the session this morning that allowed that particular phrasing to pop out, and that then it's like a nice pithy way of understanding what's number one and what's everything else, right? What is at the core of our heart, and what's our number one second priority, and our number two second priority, and our number three second priority. All those things, they matter too. They're all part of the structure. They're all part of how the pyramid stands. But we want to know, what's the top of the pyramid. So anyway, that's where I am today, folks. I appreciate you. This work is my number one priority. There's no doubt about it. And I consider myself so privileged to have all of you who, engage and watch me and respond and are in conversation with me. So thank you. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you tomorrow.